not any type of meditation where you're sitting there and you're visualizing like your goals or like you're listening to music or anything. It's like you're working. Like this meditation is work. It's not relaxing. And that's why when people say, oh, you're going to a meditation retreat, how nice. I'm like, it's not. It's hard. This is work. It's not like a relaxing vacation. I was in a state of like complete flow, whereas this sounds weird, but it felt like I was away from my body, like vibrating, like my whole body was just vibrating. And it's the coolest thing. I cannot describe it.
Welcome to Earn Your Couch episode 6. We got our second guest joining us. Her name is Maddie Jeffries. And I wrote a little introduction and I'll let her add a little bit more as to who she is. But how I know Maddie Jeffries is, one, an absolute stud, an absolute beast in the gym. She was our head coach of performance at Intersect. She is a dog mama of 2 dogs. She is an absolute Lord of the Rings nerd, a nutrition coach, a personal trainer. She practices NLP. You're also my personal supplement expert and also a bodybuilder. So, Maddie, I'm glad you're here. It's super nice that we're going to be able to catch up for real for a while. But is there anything else that you'd add to your personal intro? And this is a complete invitation to brag about yourself. And I know that you're a very humble person, but tell the people about what you do and who you are.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. That was a pretty good intro. Yeah, I mean, I've been in like the fitness, wellness, health industry for about 9 years now, which is crazy. It makes me feel old, and I'm not old. I think that's a mindset, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, more. But yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. I've touched in a lot of different areas of health, from like fitness, nutrition, meditation, to just like overall like living your life and all different aspects, habits and everything, and even like in the medical industry. So it's been a ride, and I'm still always learning. So I think that's a big thing that I strive for, and I think other people should too.
Nice. Yeah. When we first started, and this is kind of for Coleman, but like when we first started, like I'd met Maddie here and there, but then like just kind of like across the way in the gym when I was like a guest at Headstrong. And then I started talking to Maddie, and I thought I was pretty good in terms of my health knowledge and my workout knowledge. And then every time I talked to Maddie, I was just like, all right, I need you to like dumb it down for me. I need you to tell me exactly what I should be doing, what you do. So 9 years in the health and wellness space. I think what you showed me is that it's also not just training. There's so much more to it. And we both went on that journey with Intersect, figuring out how to help people. And it's not just your workouts. It's not just nutrition. It's also stress and sleep and all these things. And I feel like you've got like a little antidote or remedy or recipe for all those different things.
I like to think so at times, and then I find out something else, and I'm like, oh, I had it all wrong. Let me try this. It's always changing.
You dive in. You were coaching, doing nutrition coaching. What are you doing now? Like you moved down to LA, so I'm sure there's a new journey in some way. Are you still doing nutrition coaching? Are you still doing personal training?
Yeah, so I'm still training. Actually, mainly I'm training people now. For the past 3 years when I was in the Bay Area, I was personal training like in person here and there, but it wasn't like my main consistent like income or thing I did. I did still have a lot of nutrition clients, but I was also working and going to school to be a MA and medical assistant and pursue a more like medical route because I wanted to integrate more into that. Now I'm moving to LA, which we moved in December 1st, actually. So very recent. I'm doing primarily personal training in person. I work at a gym called Monarch Athletics, and I have about 5 or 6 online nutrition clients for my own business, and majority of them are actually prepping for bodybuilding shows, which is really cool. I've usually only had one athlete per year who I'm taking through a prep, but this year it's like majority of my clients, which is really, really cool. But the purpose of us moving to LA was we are actually helping our buddy and in a partnership of opening up an athletic training facility in Thousand Oaks. And so that's like the ultimate goal. Like me and Brenda have always wanted to own our own gym or be our own entrepreneur boss in that way. And that's the ultimate goal by probably end of this year, 2025, having the actual facility open. But right now we're working with teams, athletes in a dingy gym, and we call it the Grit Lab. And so that is our ultimate goal. But yes, I am still training people at the gym we're currently working also with their nutrition staff. They have a full like medical facility there too. We're working with the doctor there, and still have all of my online nutrition clients.
It's awesome. So the learning hasn't stopped, I'd imagine.
No, the learning never stops. And I think that's why, like you said, like you came to me and you felt like there was like always something new, or I learn something new every day. Like I am a nerd for fitness and health. Like I love listening to podcasts. I love seeing something, either whether it's on like Instagram or on like just Google or something, and I want to deep dive and learn more, like I will learn more. Like I love it because I think that anything, whether it's like nutrition or fitness or just longevity protocols, like they're coming up with things every week. There's always studies and they're always challenging the studies. And I think that's the fun part about this and why we can't be so stuck on like one protocol or one form of exercise, because also each individual is so different. We're not all going to relate to one thing or the other. One thing might work for someone, might not work for the next. And so like I've done a lot of experimenting on myself with like different diet protocols, different training styles, and like I know now really well what works best for me. But again, that's always changing too, because we get older every day. Like our bodies are constantly changing. Like, for instance, like your skin, you have new skin every 30 days. It's pretty nuts. Like it's the biggest organ on our body is our skin, and we shed skin constantly. And so every 30 days, we have absolutely completely new skin. So like we are always changing. And I think that's extremely cool.
What? That is cool. I always forget
That
the
is cool.
skin is an organ.
I didn't realize
Yeah.
it was every 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay, here's something that I don't know if it's struggled with, but people have asked, like, there is always new information coming out, and there's different people who are showing up as the new experts, and, you know, you got the Huberman Lab podcast, but then there's the Peter Attia of the world, and there's all these experts saying, hey, these are the things that you need to be incorporating every day. All of a sudden, this list can start to grow from, I need to be working out and eating right, to I need to be working out, I need to be doing zone 2 cardio, I need to be lifting weights, I need to be making sure that I'm getting all my supplements in. I need to make sure that I'm getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And all of a sudden this list it could become a job kind of thing if you're trying to do all of them. When you're working with people, maybe not who are the bodybuilders who are trying to maximize what they're looking like, but the people who are just trying to be fit, how do you like coach them and train them with the ever evolving advice and guidance? Is it like hey, we're going to try on, at the store, like we're going to try on these clothes, and if you like them, then we'll keep them. If we don't like them, then we'll shed them and move on. Or, hey, like, let's ignore that sauna study for now because we're focusing on these things. Like, how do you, because I'm sure people come up to you too and they're like, hey, I saw this thing and I should be doing, more rowing because XYZ said I should.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would have said something completely different like 2 years ago than what I'm going to say right now. But like what I've come to learn, like, not only for like other people, like my clients, but also like for myself, is that like you have to find what works for you and your lifestyle in that current moment. Because again, like for instance, like a couple years ago, I was in a completely different place where I could do bodybuilding as a bodybuilder, and all day, every day, my life was that. And now it's not, where I have to adjust and change my schedule and change what I'm doing because of my current work schedule. So I think it's important to like slowly integrate habits and have grace with yourself. And there's like I want to say a fine line, but there's like a balance that you need to have of one, choosing things that are going to align with your lifestyle. So whatever habit it is, maybe it's like, I want to really focus on sleep and I need to set up a strict bedtime and wake up time for myself so I can get my circadian rhythm in place. But you also need to have discipline. And that's a huge thing. I think so many people are so focused on like motivation and being like, oh, well, I'm not motivated today. Or like, I don't have motivation. I'm like, I don't care if you have motivation. You need to have discipline. And that is a tool that you have to learn and you have to work on. And that's one of the biggest things that I like preach to my clients is people always wonder, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you do all these competitions? Like, how are you so strict and stuff? And it's because I've learned discipline, and it comes easier for some people than others, but everyone can do it. It's completely a mental game. And so I think to answer your question, I kind of went like very broad answer, but I think it's one, finding things that work with your current lifestyle and things that you enjoy so it doesn't become a chore. Because when it becomes a chore, you're not going to do it. You might do it for a couple of weeks and then you fall off. So do something that you find enjoyment in, and also find what your discipline is. Learn what that is. Find your boundaries and know that you can push through it and that you can be disciplined. Because I hear so often so much self-doubt of like, I could never do that. No, you can. You choose not to. You choose not to be disciplined, or you choose not to believe in yourself. Everything's a choice.
I'm actually curious with your clients. Teaching discipline is, honestly, I don't even know how you really teach discipline unless you're doing it. But I'm sure it sounds like this is something your clients are constantly dealing with, is just being disciplined itself. How are you teaching that to them when they first come to you or in the middle of training with you? How are you actually teaching them to be disciplined?
That's a good question. I think it varies. I think it's different for each client. But to start off, to answer that question, I think it also has a big thing to do with their mental state in that point, whether they're ready to do that or not. Because like not everyone's ready to hear that or ready to accept it or ready to take on that challenge. And so like in the past, I've used like NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, trying to first break through barriers that you have, whether it's self-doubt or whether it's like your relationship to food. We work through that before we even try to dive into those habits or create those disciplines. It's first like talking through it and saying like, okay, like what is stopping you right now? How can we work through it? How can we acknowledge that and observe it rather than attach ourselves to it? And that's a big thing that I'm sure we'll get into when we talk about meditation, but like we attach ourselves to things, like whether it's an emotion, whether it's an experience in life, we attach ourselves and either it makes us happy, sad, angry, fearful. But really, if we just take a step back and we observe it objectively, then we can take a different perspective on it. We can move past it. And that's something that I have to continuously remind myself, even like in preps and stuff, like there's definitely weeks or times where I look back now and I'm like, I could have pushed more and I wish I had. But in that moment, I was attaching myself to the pain I was feeling, to the fatigue I was feeling. And I didn't look at it objectively. I was fearful of the future and I wasn't in the present. And I think that's a big thing that so many people are afraid of, is the future. And so when you're looking at discipline, I would say look at the day to day. Like take each day one at a time and also think about what would happen if I did this and what would happen if I didn't. For instance, let's talk about cardio. Like cardio, not a lot of people like to do it. It's a strain. Not many people like it. I don't like it sometimes either. And so if it's like, oh, like it's 5:30 at night, I haven't done my hour of cardio and I have to. And that is like the struggle I'm dealing with. How would I feel if I did it? And that feeling I get after versus how would I feel if I didn't do it? And tomorrow I feel guilt or resentment towards it. So I always like to kind of take that 5-minute rule of taking a step back. I use this with also food, like your choices with food, but also with anything, any decision. It's like take 5 minutes, think on it. If you still really don't want to do it and it's going to cause you pain to do it and it's not worth it, don't do it. But if you think about it and you're like, you know what, like I know I'm going to feel so much better after it. And I know tomorrow I accomplished another day, another task that was difficult and I had a lot of friction with, then that's going to push you. So that's like kind of like the start of like creating that discipline, is you have to look at things objectively. And you also need to acknowledge like what your current barriers are and why are they there.
I like that. I really resonate with that actually, because so I'm not like Jake or you. I am not super into like being super fit, being at the gym all the time, but I really enjoy the satisfaction of going and doing something, feeling like I had a productive day, and hence the earn your couch mindset, right? But I resonate with that because I had a really tough time disassociating the idea of having fun with like going and having a fun time and alcohol needs to be involved versus going and having a fun time and you don't need to have a beer along with that, or you don't need to go out to the bars to have fun. And so Jake and I were doing 75 hard, or Jake likes to call it 75 with the egg thing. What are you talking about? 75?
I call it 75 sunny side up.
That's right.
Because
yeah, that's
I don't
right.
know why I associated the hard with hard boiled, but yeah, it's not the full like 2 workouts a day. It's the same structure, just we tailored it to our own kind of habits that we're trying to implement, and we can talk about what we're doing.
Yeah, and I'm calling it 75 days for earning the L couch, not just a 3-seater, because it's not too easy, but it's not too hard. It's right in the middle.
You need to have
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
got a recliner. We're good.
But my point is part of that is alcohol. And I've learned over the past 10 days while doing this is I've learned the feelings of having fun without really thinking about it. at all, you know? And for me, I'm not going and drinking all the time, but, you know, going and getting a beer and enjoying the afternoon with a beer was something I would think about. And so now the past 10 days, I've built this discipline of getting all these things done for my 75 days of earning my couch. And I've also been able to find that balance between being okay with going and getting my steps in and working out and all that. So I really like the fact that you teach discipline and it's not the motivational factor. I haven't heard that before, so that was really cool.
Yeah, I think that like there's so many different techniques out there that are like, oh, how to stay motivated or like how to visualize and like get to your goal. And like even when we're talking about goals, it's like that topic itself, I'm like, I don't necessarily like having a goal is good, but that's not my primary focus when I'm working with people. It's not always the goal because also if we have like too big of a goal, like it can be scary. And if we don't meet it, then we feel even worse about ourselves. And what's the point of that, you know? And so like, rather than focusing again on that fearful long-term thing in the future, it's like, let's just focus on the day-to-day and establish the things that are going to get us to a goal. And that's like the discipline. Like, it's great if you're motivated. That's awesome. There's weeks where I feel super motivated and I'm like, I feel awesome and I want to run every day. I want to go to the gym every day. And there's weeks where I don't. There's a lot of weeks that I don't. Like, I am not perfect. And that's the thing is like so many people, especially like through like social media, they'll see like on Instagram, like, oh, you're going on your daily walks with your dog. Your meals look so prepped and ready. And I'm like, it looks perfect from the outside. Like on the inside, there's so many days, more often than not, where I feel like shit, to be honest. And like, I don't want to do things. I'm not motivated. And I rely fully on my discipline to get me through it. And that's just because I have been doing it for a long time and I have gotten to that point where like my discipline overtakes that. But anyone can do it. That's the thing is like you just have to like it's consistency. And that's another huge thing I always preach to my clients is like consistency is your best friend. That is the key, is being consistent. If you're trying to form a habit, you can't form a habit. It doesn't become a habit unless you're consistent, right? Because a habit is something like brushing your teeth. You don't think about it, you just do it every morning. That's a habit. It's not, oh, some days I walk in the morning, right? That's not a habit because it's not consistent. And so when we're trying to get into like establishing a nutrition routine or a workout routine, it's consistency, doing it every single day until it becomes a habit or until it becomes ingrained in you that you love doing it. There's no friction when you go to do it. And so I think habit forming is like the biggest key and consistency to actually being successful in anything you do, whether it's health related or not, whether it's work related, whether it has to do with just your overall daily life, is those habits is what will get you to that goal.
I wrote down a few things because there's a lot of sick shit in what you just said. But it reminded me of three things, and I'll kind of just list them off. And if any of these things resonate, then take it from here. One, it reminds me of Huberman talking about the anterior cingulate cortex, which is like the goal for, if you're not sure, it's the area of your brain that the people who are more willing to do things that they don't want to do, this area is bigger in the brain. So people like Navy SEALs, it's really high. It's really large. People who are really fit and older in life, it's really large. People who are very obese, it's very small because they succumb to, they just do the thing, just throwing everyone into a group. But like the people who will just do the things that they want to do and not do the things that they don't want to do, this area is affected. So that reminds me of that. Like that area can grow the more often you do the things that you don't want to do. And it's like when you see an ice bath, and like the very first time anyone sees an ice bath or thinks about going in, they're like, absolutely fucking not. And then you do it and you're like, this is horrible, this is horrible, this is horrible. But then like if you will go to do it the next day, there's a shorter time to, getting in.
Yeah.
Another thing that reminded me of was motivation is like, it's an emotion. It's a feeling. Oh, I'm feeling motivated. You don't feel disciplined. Like you either practice discipline or you feel motivation. Well, as we know, emotions are they pass. And so you can never fully rely on it. And then I remember a quote that said like, you can't fully rely on motivation, but discipline is the act of prioritizing self-love over other things, because that discipline to go work out when you don't want to work out, knowing that it always works in making you feel better. It's knowing that it's going to make you sleep better, knowing that all of these things compound. And so I try to think about that too, where I really don't want to go, if I don't want to go work out, it's just let's just go do something for 30 minutes because I know that after the 30 minutes is done, one, I'm going to feel accomplished. Two, I'm going to probably enjoy it about 5 minutes into the activity because I'm now showing up for myself. And three, I never get mad about doing a workout.
Mhm.
And then I would imagine too, this is the last piece that I wrote down, was your clients then start to see like a reinforcement of when I do this, even when I don't want to do it, I feel improved or I am confident and I feel like for me, it takes those instances to stack of all the times where I don't want to do it and then actually doing it. And then I can rely on that in the future where I'm like, oh, remember when I didn't want to do it on Monday and then I did it and then that rocked. So those are the things that came to my mind when you were talking there.
All those things you just said right there, like that's the compound effect. Like, have you guys ever read that book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy? Great book.
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
It's super good. Highly recommend. He also has like a journal. Like, you can do like a yearly journal of like the compound effect. And it's basically like all those things compounding. Like it can be, I hate using these words, negative or positive, but it can be like negative actions or positive actions, but they compound into one big effect, right? And so like if we choose positive things that are going to make us feel better, then that is going to compound into the greater goal. And so that's a really good book. But also it's like the thing that I thought about when you mentioned that, Jake, was there's been so many times over like the past couple of years that I've been like bodybuilding where people say things like, oh, like, well, you're not enjoying life, or like, you don't enjoy like the fun things. Like, when do you have fun kind of thing? And you should let loose. And I'm like, well, the thing is, the things I'm doing, that makes me feel good. Like going out and drinking and like feeling like shit the next day, like, and not getting my workout in, that does not make me feel good. Or even just like, this is a very more outward, like physique thing, of like appearance. But when I feel bloated or I feel heavier or I don't feel I look good when I look in the mirror, just like anyone else, and critiquing myself, like that doesn't make me feel good. And so when I am consistent with the things that I know are going to make me feel good, that makes me happy. And so even though my lifestyle and the choices that I make to make myself happy don't align with majority of the people out there who say like, oh, I like to go out and I like to party or I like to, and no shame on that. Like, do what makes you happy. If that makes you happy, go for it. I'm not here to judge. But so many people always say like, you're not living life or you're not letting loose. Like, how are you enjoying life? And I'm like, trust me, I enjoy life. Like, I feel good. I like the way I look. And that is an appearance thing. And I'm owning up to that. Like, maybe it is something vain, but I like to look good. And so like I do bodybuilding. And so the things that make me feel good, that makes me happy. Feeling hungover and not in my right mind the next day, that does not make me feel happy. And so I think everyone has their own choice in their own lifestyle and like the things that compound to an ultimate goal. But I think that's like when we talk about happiness, like everyone has their own version of that.
It's starting to make decisions. We were talking about this, Coleman, the other day, but it's starting to make decisions that are more seeking the approval of yourself as opposed to seeking the approval of others. And I feel like when you're in your low 20s and you're just like constantly surrounded by people in there who are figuring out who they are and figuring out what they like to do, and most people are partying every single weekend, like we're still in that process of delineating between doing the things that we used to always do and the things that we now are finding, oh, my current self actually loves doing this way more, even though not everyone is doing that all the time. But I think people like, even if they're like, oh, like for 75 hard, like not drinking. I went out to the bars last night. I didn't drink. And like I could feel people like defending themselves for drinking. Even though like they're like, oh, like can I get you a beer? I'm like, oh, I'm sober tonight. And then they're like, oh yeah, like I was going to do sober January, but I don't care if you're like, do it. I mean, I would love to, it sounds fun to have a couple beers right now, or 7. But I'm making this decision because I know that I had this today and I wanted to show up and be alert and be myself. And I'm also doing 75 hard. And so I'm engineering an environment to cultivate the habits that I want to practice, that I know that improve me. And I feel like it's that decision. Once again, it's discipline as well, but it's the decision to show up and do the things that, and love yourself and do the things that, make you feel better, feel fulfilled, and stack. And I love that compound effect.
Yeah, absolutely. So often, honestly, every single time I work with a client, they might have like that external, like overarching goal of, I want to lose this many pounds or I want to look this way. But the first things that pretty much every single client I've worked with notice is I feel better. I'm waking up and I'm not hitting a crash in the middle of the day. I don't feel bloated anymore. I'm happier. Like my skin is better. Like all of those other little things that overall contribute to like a happier life is what they see first and foremost. And I think by far, like those are the most important thing, because if we're looking from a longevity perspective and just we have this life, like let's make the most of it. Like it's not about those one-time goals of I want to lose this much weight or I want to look this way. It's the smaller things that make you happy and healthy.
I agree with that. I was going to ask you, what are some of those compounding habits that you have personally, not like for your clients, but like personally what you're doing every single day to feel happy?
Yeah. I will say I am currently on the mission to get back into a lot of those because I'm not making excuses here, but moving and stuff, like life happens. And I think that's an important lesson right there too. But some of the things that I know work well for me personally is like, I'm a big advocate for like morning routine. I think the morning sets you up for the day. And I personally, like, I am not an night owl. I love waking up early. I love having my time in the morning to do my routine. And so, like, things that always make me feel better is like first thing in the morning, I drink water. Like, I always drink a ton of water first before I have coffee, caffeine, anything else is water. And I always personally, like, I put a bunch of lemon. I use stevia too in my water because I just like the taste. Sometimes it's bubbly too, who knows? But that is something that I always do. I also add creatine. Creatine is like my favorite supplement out there by far. But that's something I always do, no matter what, is water. Like hydrate first thing in the morning. 2 is going for a walk. And I'm just going to say any time of the day, daily, like I need to go for at least one walk because that's where I'm able to clear my mind. That's where I'm able to get outside, get morning sunlight. Like the days where I don't wake up and go outside, like within the first like 2-3 hours of the morning, I feel so sluggish and I feel more tired. Like even if I'm sleeping in and getting more sleep that night, I feel so tired because I haven't gotten out. I haven't done the things that my body is used to. I haven't woken up my circadian rhythm. And movement, I think, is a big key to that. So like whether it's going for a walk or stretching, like I stretch every single day in the morning because the day is my workout. So why am I not warming up for it? If I don't, I feel like a 90-year-old woman. I'm 26 going on 27 and I feel like an old lady if I don't stretch in the morning, just because also like I do a lot of activity, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of running. And so if I don't prioritize that part of my recovery, then I don't feel good. So right off the bat, like drinking water, creatine, all my supplements in the morning, which is a lot, to be honest, right now. I take a lot of supplements and stretching and walking. Those things right there, those 3 things are an absolute must. Even when Brando and I went on vacation, I made sure that I still did that every single morning because it makes me feel good and it's something that I think you can keep in your routine if it's a habit. And even doing that, even if the rest of your day isn't according to plan, maybe if you don't work out, maybe you are going out to the bars or you are going wine tasting, just having that morning routine makes a huge difference. So I would say those 3 things in the morning is a key thing for me. Walking is huge. Brando even says he's like, the past, not yesterday, but the 2 days before we were we weren't at work. And I personally can't stand just sitting around. I get so antsy and anxious if I'm not doing something productive. And that's something I'm actually trying to work on. I'm trying to work on like actually not doing as much because I think it's okay to do that sometimes and actually just relax and do nothing. But he was like, you should go for a walk. You seem very anxious. I need to go for a walk right now. Like, and if it's just 5 minutes, like getting outside, I need to feel like I'm moving, doing something. And it's just a time to like clear my head and just be outside. I love being outside, whether it's a busy road and I'm walking Duncan or if it's going on a hike or a trail run. I just like being outside.
Those are all really good habits. And I personally have been trying to be better at that too. I totally get what you mean when you go on a walk and you just reset. Jake and I actually just talked about that a couple days ago, how I personally use an end of the day walk to transition from being from work to being my own personal self, being able to actually have a better mindset with my fiance back at home because I work from home all day and it's hard to make that transition between work and home when you're always at home. So going for walks has actually really helped me do that. And it gets our dogs out. I have 2 dogs as well. And there's something so nice, by the way. I don't know if you feel this way about just taking your dogs out and getting them out. You feel so fulfilled afterwards. Anyways, just wanted to point that out. But Maddie, I heard you went on this silent retreat. Sounds very interesting, and I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, let's dive in. So I'll preface with this that it's hard to describe everything in full and to fully understand the practice and the meditation, but unless you actually go to it. But so I highly recommend people go to it, but I will do my best to describe it as well as I can. But yeah, so it's called Vipassana, and it's a 10-day silent retreat. They have meditation centers, Dhamma centers all over the world. They have, I believe, 4 in Northern California and 1 in Joshua Tree, at least in California, but they have them all over the world. And Brando was the one who actually introduced this to me. We just went to one in this last December. And this was his 5th one. So he's been doing it since I think he was in high school, going into college. 2017, I think, or 2018 is when he first went. And so this was my 2nd one. But he is the one who introduced this to me. Actually, the first time we ever hung out and first started dating, this was the conversation we had. He was just blabbering on about this. And I was like, all right, cool, do it. And so what it is it's a 10-day silent retreat. It's one of the oldest forms of meditation. Like when we talk about meditation, there's many different forms of meditation. So many people can meditate and do it in a different style. But this one is a very strict form, and it's a very old form. And the teachers of it have kept it the exact same for years. And the teacher of it is S.N. Goenka. And he's dead now. He died a couple of years ago. But with the 10-day retreat, I actually have the pamphlet here because I want to read to you guys how they describe what it is so I don't mess it up. But so they describe what it's not and what it is. So what Vipassana is not. It's not a rite or a ritual based on blind faith, which meaning it's not attached to any sort of religion. So it's not a religious form of meditation or anything. It's neither an intellectual nor a philosophical entertainment. It's not a rest cure, a holiday, or an opportunity for socializing. And it's not an escape from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. The biggest thing that they kind of focus on here is it's a learning technique. It's a technique to liberate yourself. And what Vipassana is, it is a technique that will eradicate suffering. It is a method of mental purification which allows one to face life's tensions and problems in a calm and balanced way. It is an art of living that one can use to make positive contributions to society. So again, in layman terms, it's a way to eradicate your own miseries. So we create our own miseries. Like I talked about before, we attach ourselves to emotions, to experiences in life, what one other person does to us or says to us, we attach ourselves to it. And it's about how we react to that. So say Jake says something mean to me. I attach myself to the feeling, maybe it's hurtful. I attach myself to that. And I react in a certain way, which causes me a misery. I do that to myself. He didn't do it to me. I chose to react that way. So we create our own miseries. We cannot blame anyone else, any experience. There may be someone out there that does something completely awful to someone, but still we are the cause of our own miseries. So this practice teaches us how to liberate that of ourselves, liberate our own miseries and eradicate them so that we have a more balanced life. And it's all about observing. So the 10-day retreat, all new students have to do 10 days because they want to really integrate you into it and have you actually learn the entire practice in full. So when you go, you take 7 precepts, and these precepts, I'll read them again so I don't botch it, but the precepts are to abstain from killing any being, to abstain from stealing, to abstain from all sexual activity, to abstain from telling lies, to abstain from all intoxicants, to abstain from eating after midday, to abstain from sensual entertainment and bodily decorations, to abstain from using high or luxurious beds. So the reason that they have you go to these Dhamma centers is so that they can make it very easy for you to follow these 7 precepts so that you can best learn the practice. So for instance, everyone has their own room, their own bunk. You take a vow of noble silence. So you do not talk to anyone there. You do not look anyone in the eyes because that is a form of communication. You don't use any gestures towards anyone. because that is a form of communication. And so that is your noble silence. So that way you can't speak lies. So that's one of the precepts. The other one is men and women are separated. So even though Brandon and I went together, we were completely separated. There's the men's area and there's the women's area. The only time everyone is together is in the meditation hall during the meditation hours. And they're still on opposite sides. And then the other one is to abstain from killing anything. So for instance, like they have in each room a bug relocator. Don't kill the bugs there. You relocate them outdoors. To also the diet there is plant-based. It's not vegan, but it's vegetarian. And so to abstain from killing anything, you're not eating meat or anything. To stop eating after midday. It's a very strict timetable. You eat at 6:30 in the morning is breakfast that they feed you. Lunch is at 11 to 12. And then after that is just afternoon tea and fruit for the new students, but old students just have tea. So you're basically like fasting. And the other ones, sorry, I'm remembering. So like taking any intoxicants, like obviously you're not like bringing alcohol with you or like weed or anything like that. And also any form of entertainment. So you're not allowed to work out. You're not allowed to bring reading materials, writing materials, and practice any other form of religion or other practice. They have walking paths there. And so you can walk on like the breaks that they have. You're not working out, you're not reading, writing, anything, because those are distractions. And when we allow distractions in, that takes away from the practice. And so it's this very strict form so that you are very integrated and that you can learn the practice. And so the timetable, like when you arrive, is technically 12 days because the day you arrive is day 0 and the day you leave is day 12 or day 11. And so it's 10 days and you wake up at 4 a.m. every day and then you meditate in your room and then you have breakfast. They provide food for you. And also these centers, they're all based on donations. You don't pay to go. It's all free. So they're fully based on donations. They only accept donations from people who have done the course because they want you to understand what you're donating to. It's a very, very like humble thing. And so you have breakfast and then you have like a little break and then you go to the hall to meditate. There's 3 mandatory sittings in the hall with the teachers. And you can talk to the teachers if you need help with something or need help understanding something. You can talk to them, but you can't talk to anyone else. And these are like 1 hour, sometimes an hour and a half long sittings in there. And you can either be sitting on a cushion, crisscross, or some people request chairs if they have like back pains or like they're older or they're pregnant. And so there's 3 mandatory sittings in the hall, but basically you are meditating like 7 hours a day and 3 times in the hall. And then they have certain times on your own where you're meditating. And then certain break times where you can like walk around or sleep if you need to.
Are they guided meditations or how do you know how to meditate?
Yeah. So the first 4 days, you learn what's called anapana, and that is just focusing and observing the breath of your nose. So underneath the nostrils and above the upper lip. For each hour that you're sitting, you are only focusing on this. So just observing the breath. You're not trying to control it. You are observing it. So for instance, you're observing the sensations that occur, whether you feel warm air going in, cold air coming out, whether you feel a tickle on your lip from the breath in your nostrils, you feel the air going in. For 4 days, that's all you are focusing on. And the biggest thing is like, obviously your mind wanders, right? And they always keep saying like, if your mind wanders, don't get discouraged. Just bring it back to the practice. Just bring it back to the practice. Continue to focus on the breath. And the whole purpose of this is to focus on the small areas so you can understand and learn how to observe things. After the 4th day, well, before I go into after the 4th day, each night there's a discourse. So you watch a video of Goenka and he is telling stories. He's teaching about the practice, what it means. Like, it's crazy because every single day when you listen to the discourse, it's like he knows what you're going through. And he like explains things of like what you're feeling, what you should be feeling, what you should be focusing on, tells stories that kind of like elaborate more on the practice itself and why it's important. And so every night after the last sitting in the hall, we watch the discourse, which is about like an hour, hour and a half long. And that's where you continue to learn about the practice and what you're supposed to be doing. And you're also, when you start the meditation and you close your eyes, they have like the recording of him and he'll like start you off and be like, okay, like go ahead and start meditating, breathe in through your nose, out through your nostrils, focus on the breath, observe the small area underneath the nostrils above the upper lip. So the whole thing is guided by Goenka, by recordings of him and videos of him teaching the practice. And so after the 4th day, that's when you learn Vipassana. So it's Anapana for the first 4 days, Vipassana after the 4th day. And this is where the hour of determination, strong determination comes in. So every hour that you are in the hall, the 3 mandatory hours, you are unable to open your eyes, uncross your legs if you're crisscross applesauce, and uncross your hands. You have to sit like a statue for an hour and observe. And so that's what they call the hour of strong determination. And you are studying from the top of your head and scanning your body, the sensations, all the way down to your feet, and so you're just observing. And that's the whole point. It's like you're not attaching yourself to the sensations. Like if you feel an itch or a tickle on your nose, you're not going to immediately react and go like this. That is reacting. That's attaching myself, like, oh, my itch. No, it's just a sensation, right? So that is what the whole purpose of it is teaching, is to not attach yourself to these, because what it does is it causes sankaras, which is those deep-rooted miseries. And so the first time I went to the 10-day course, it was extremely painful, like by far the most painful thing I've ever gone through, because sitting for an hour without moving, I felt my knees, my hips, my ankles, my back in ways I've never felt it before, because it just hurts. Like you're sitting there for an hour and you cannot move. And I mean, you can if you want to, but they want you to just observe it. Like if you feel a pain, like observe it as if you're a doctor. A patient comes in and they say, I have this pain in my knee. The doctor doesn't feel a pain. He's not attached to it, but he's like, oh, okay, I'm observing your pain. That's how we should observe these things. We are the doctor. We are observing it from objectively, right? So the first time I went, like, it was the hardest thing, because also it was my first time going, learning everything. And I kid you not, like those pains and everything, those sensations, that is what they cause. Those miseries are coming up and they are surfacing and we are observing them. So like there was one sitting, I believe it was on the 7th day that I was there, where I was just got so hot. I was sweat, like I could literally feel sweat dripping down my arms, and I was sitting there and I was just like, I want to move so bad. Like it was awful. Like so bad. And I was like, you know what? This is just a deep rooted misery that's coming up. It's surfacing. Like it's something that's there. Like I need to just like observe it and sit through it. After that sitting, like finally being able to like move and get up and walk outside in like the cool air, because it was in October, it was like cold. It did feel like liberating. I was like, okay, like, you know what, like I sat through it. I did not move, like, and that was eradicating. That was liberating. And so every time is different. At least like Brando, he's been to 5 different ones, and he's like, every single time's different. What I feel, how it feels, things that come up, the thoughts that come up. So like the first time I went, it was more so like a physical thing for me. Like it was physically very taxing and hard. And this time, the last time I went, it was more of a mental challenge. Like sitting wasn't as hard for me because I already knew I could sit through stuff. Like I was like, okay, I've done this before. Like it hurts, but like I know just as it comes, it's also going to pass. That's the whole thing. Every emotion, every physical thing we feel, like it will come, but it will pass. Nothing is permanent. It's the law of impermanence. And so that part was easy for me, but it was my mind wandering. My mind wanted to wander so much. I would be trying to focus on the practice and I'd start thinking about something else in life. And it's all these distractions in life, like social media or things we hear on the news, like things that we attach ourselves to, emotions, like events, like they're distracting and our minds wander, and it's hard to focus on the task at hand and really be present. The present, what actually is truly present, is the sensations we feel. We are constantly changing. We are constantly getting closer to death. We are constantly dying, right? We're getting older by the second. But these sensations that we feel when we're meditating, those are present. That's what's happening right now. And they are constantly changing. One sensation will pop up, one will pop up, and then it goes away. That is presence. That's true presence. And so observing that is like the practice.
That's crazy.
Like,
Crazy cool.
like,
It's crazy
wow.
cool. That's a lot of
It's so much.
it's a lot of rules that you had to follow in that 12-day period, 10-day period. But I'm just curious, taking like those lessons that you learned being there, how are you actually like implementing that into your day-to-day now? Because clearly you're going back a second time, so you got something out of it, right? Sounds like you got something out of it. So how are you using those tools that you learned, that you got from it, into your day-to-day?
Yeah, so it's funny because it's like, it's painful, it's hard. It's by far the hardest thing I've ever done physically and mentally. But you want more, because it's, like, even though I talked about a lot of the things that are like, oh, these sensations that hurt and like the things that you have to sit through, like there's also really like, and I hate saying this because they don't want you to also attach yourselves to the good ones, but there's also like vibrations you feel that are like, wow, this sensation feels good. Like when you actually get in like a flow state of like scanning your body, like you can start going fast and you can start feeling like every part of your body like you've never felt before. And it might be like a tickling sensation, like a vibration or something. Like there was like a few times, I think it was like 2 or 3 times where like it was flowing so well and I was in a state of like complete flow, where it's like This sounds weird, but it felt like I was away from my body, like vibrating, like my whole body was just vibrating. And it's the coolest thing. I cannot describe it. But I also, you don't want to attach yourself to that good feeling, because that also is, there's craving and there's aversion. Both of them cause miseries. Craving something that's good, that will cause you misery, because once it goes away and you're like, oh, I want the vibrations. They feel so good. And like Goenka always says this, it's like, oh, it's such a good feeling. And then it goes away and you're, oh, I'm so miserable. Why is it gone? Right? So craving and aversion, they both cause miseries. And so something that I took away from this is like, even like with like food, like I'm such a foodie. Jake, you know this. Like I love food and I have a sweet tooth, and like everyone feels cravings for food and stuff. And like now, even like after this one, I'm like, you know what, craving, like I'm craving something and that's causing me misery because I want it so badly and I can't have it. Or when I do have it, it's not as good the second time and it's causing me pain. Like that is misery, right? Or even like if you're like, oh, like my life like months ago was so much better than it is right now, and you're craving that happiness you felt, like that's causing you misery. And so if we just look at it from an outside perspective and objectively and just be present of like, okay, like I'm causing myself this own misery. Like I don't need to do this. Like this is on me. Instead, I'm just going to be more present and look at it objectively. Even situations like before moving, I was so stressed out. I was not in a good place. I was like, not that life was like bad, but I was just stressed out from moving, like changing to go to a new job. I was super anxious. Like there's a lot going on. And then we were like, literally, we're going to move and 2 days later go to our 10-day Vipassana retreat. And I was just like, there's just so much going on right now. Like I'm stressed. And looking back at that after going to the 10-day course, I was like, why was I doing that to myself? Like I literally was causing myself stress, thinking about the future when I'm not even there yet. I don't know if it's going to be bad. And I feel like we so often do that. We look at the future all the time, or we look at the past. We are not present. And that's what causes us misery too. It's like we are already causing ourselves anxiousness, assuming we're going to be anxious in the future before it even happens. We don't know, right? So why are we doing that? And just acknowledging that like what other people do to us, like we determine how that makes us feel. I cannot blame any one person, any experience. That person might just be ignorant. And I have to give them love because they are ignorant, right? They're not at fault. I'm not at fault unless I cause that misery for myself, right? A big part of this practice is also having compassion for people and love for people, love for all beings, being compassionate that they might just be ignorant, right? And they are projecting their own miseries onto me. And I don't need to take those in. I don't need to make that self cause my own misery. I observe it objectively and I have love and compassion for them, for feeling the way, for being miserable themselves.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because everything that you're saying is like relates to like 3 or 4 books that I've read in the last like 2 months. It has been the four agreements. I don't know if you've read this. Yeah, and so don't take anything personally. Is one of the agreements. It reminded me of the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, and one of his things is desire. He defines desire, and you use the word, not aversion. You use, what was the other one? You just said it. It's okay.
Aversion and craving.
Craving. I think desire and craving is probably similar. Like desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. And so it's like, oh, I want ice cream, but I can't have, but I'm not going to eat it. Well, now you're going to be unhappy until you get it. And so now you're just setting yourself up for failure. And then the other book is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and how we latch onto the past and we dwell on the things that are sad, that make us unhappy in the present moment because of things that no longer exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stress ourselves out or get anxious about things that are coming in the future that cause us to be unhappy now, even though those things also don't exist yet. And to your point, like you don't know if it's going to be bad. You don't know, like you start when you're super stressed about the future, you usually go to like almost like the worst case scenario, and then you cause yourself to live through that current in the present moment. So one of like someone, I think it was Naval, he talked about, it's like, why would you do that to yourself knowing that you might have to live through it in the future? And so then you're living through a negative experience twice. Or you can not live through it in the present thinking about the future, and then you can just deal with it when you get there, if it actually happens.
Yeah.
So that's all really cool that you kind of have like 10 days to like focus on like practicing those things and learning those things. Because I've felt when I am practicing all these things that I've learned about and have been absorbing, I am more fulfilled, or I am happier, or I have these kind of like heuristics or rules that I can like lean on and be like that's the philosophy, that there's a philosophy to this. There's like, I'm not going to take this thing personally because I don't have any control over how they're reacting or the way that they're thinking or whether or not they're ready to be on the same level of consciousness as yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, now that you've removed for about a month from this experience, like how do you keep your, like, I find like I need to keep revisiting the books, or I need to
Yeah.
keep looking up, being like, oh, I remember that was like in chapter 3 of this book. Like, let me go reread with it. And then it's a reminder. But like the time between absorbing it, the longer it goes to where you haven't read it, the easier it gets to like revert back to the old habits or the old mental models on like how to live. And so I'm curious, like, do you have have you implemented a daily practice? Do you have intentions that you set? Do you have just conversations with Brando a lot about how to react in certain situations? Like, how do you keep it fresh so that you're continuing to like evolve and improve your practice of it?
Yeah. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie.
Really hard.
And I think that's what draws people back to it too. At least like me and Brando, like it had been 2 years since we had gone to 2 or 3 years since we had gone to the first, or my first one, his fourth one. And we both like kind of felt that urge of like, we need to go back. Like we need this in our life right now. But when they're there, they actually tell you like the reason you're here for 10 days and you're so immersed, like you literally have no connection to the outside world. Like they take your phone, they take your keys, you have nothing. You don't know what's going on. Aren't talking to anyone. You are with yourself, solely with yourself. And I think that's scary for a lot of people. They're scared of finding out who they really are and being actually like, a lot of people say like, I'm alone. Like I'm alone a lot. Like in my own thoughts, I'm like, yeah, but not like this. This is different. Like you are not truly alone. Like you're distracting yourself with like social media on your phone, scrolling through TikTok. That's not alone, right? But when you're there, they even tell you like, hey, like these 10 days, like once you go home, it's not going to be the same. Like you're not going to be able to feel the vibrations or the sensations as deeply as you feel them here, because there are distractions. You're going to go back to your life. You're going to go back to work. You're going to have all these things going on. And so being realistic with yourself and not being discouraged that you're not feeling it as intense as you do here. Just the biggest thing is try to keep the practice. Meditate an hour in the morning and an hour at night, and just keep that consistent and try to go to a 10-day course at like once a year. And so Brandon and I really, after this one, really, really wanted to continue the practice because there's different levels to it. To be honest, like even like the 10-day course, like there's other like teachings and stuff, like courses you can go to that teach like a little bit deeper into it, which we really want to go to. But we really wanted to integrate this into our life much more, because when we leave there, like you feel so, the best word I can say is liberated. Like you feel so good, and there's no feeling like it. Like 2 times I left there, I'm just like, I don't want to even like touch my phone. Like I'm horrible at responding back to people because they text me and I'm just like, I'm so sorry, I haven't even looked at my phone. I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to like, you feel good. And so we really wanted to implement it. So we have been, I will say like the past week, we're still like adjusting to like our work schedule and like finding time, because we wake up at 4 a.m. to get ready to leave for work. And so like finding time to meditate in the morning, we just realistically like, we're like, it's not really possible for us right now. So like we meditate at night together. And so keeping up that practice is the key, is just continuing to meditate, even if like, again, there's a lot of friction with it. There's so many times where like I'm already laying in bed and I'm like, I'm tired, I want to go to bed. And it's like, we haven't meditated yet. We have like an hour that we need to sit there and meditate. And there's many times I don't want to do it, but I know how beneficial and how it makes me feel. And so again, discipline. It's a very disciplinary technique of meditation. It's not any type of meditation where you're sitting there and you're visualizing like your goals or like you're listening to music or anything. It's like you're working. Like this meditation is work. It's not relaxing. And that's why when people say, oh, you're going to a meditation retreat, how nice. I'm like, it's not. It's hard. This is work. It's not like a relaxing vacation. Like, to be honest, like this last time I was there, like the first couple of days, like a lot of times you'll feel kind of like homesick and just like kind of crazy, just like, oh my gosh, like I want to go home right now. Like I don't have my phone, I'm not talking to anyone, like I'm meditating, I'm so tired. And the first like 6 days I was there this time, like I think I also just needed it. I was like, I could stay here forever. Like this right here feels like the real world. And this world is not real. It's filled with so many distractions, so many things that are fed to us through social media, through TV, through news, through so many things. And that's not real. What's at the meditation, that is real. That's present. That's what I'm feeling that current moment. That's who I am. Your memory gets better when you're there. It's crazy. Like, I remember things from my childhood that I never even like thought about for years that pop up. And I'm just like, I completely forgot about that, because you're accessing different parts of your brain. Like, they say there's like so many studies that show how meditation actually helps with like trauma or memory loss. Like, Brandon has short-term memory loss from all the concussions he had from football. Like, it's actually really bad. And when he meditates consistently, it's better. You're accessing different parts of your brain. And so, like, bringing it back, like, we try to continue the practice by like continuing to meditate and also like keeping each other accountable. That's why it's so nice that we do it together. And like, they say that when you meditate in a room, you create Dhamma. And Dhamma is like that love that you give to someone. You practice metta. And metta is like, after you finish your hour meditation, you sit there for like 5 or 10 more minutes and you are having compassion and love for like everyone. And that you're expressing that and pushing that out into like basically like the atmosphere in the room that you meditate in, that has Dhamma in it. And when more than one person in the household meditates, you just have Dhamma in that household. Like, even when we go to the center, like we go to the one in Kelseyville and it's beautiful out there. Like, and people are like, isn't it kind of scary? You're like out in the woods and it's like dark and like all of a sudden I'm like, no, like it's so peaceful there. Like, it's such like a good place and you just feel that. And like, even through social media, people have told me and messaged me after I come back from one of these retreats and they're like, you seem lighter. You just seem happier. And it's like one of those things, like it emanates. Like, people can feel that when you are in a certain state. They can feel when you are in a state of misery or if you're in a state of happiness and bliss. Like, people can feel that. And so that's something that I like also really want to keep, is I want people to feel that from me. Like, I want to give that good Dhamma to people, you know? And it's such a good feeling. And even though it's like a hard practice, it's a discipline. It's not easy at all. And it's like, it's terrifying going back to those retreats. Like, this time when I was going to go, I was like, I almost didn't sign up, actually. Brandon was the one who was like, aren't you going to sign up? Like, I signed up and I was like, I guess.
So much
I know I
work.
need to. I don't want to, bro. And like, even I like didn't want to, like, I wanted to go back, but I was just like, oh, like, it's scary, because I knew how painful it was going to be. And so I was scared to go back, but I was like, it's so good for me. I need to do this. Like, I need this in my life. And that's why I love telling people about it, because it's like, I think everyone needs this. I think everyone needs a break from this reality and be able to, one, eradicate their miseries, whatever that may be. And it's like, you can't go into it thinking like, I've been dealing with this breakup and I really want to move through it. It's whatever comes up, you know? It's like, you can't pick and choose what you're trying to move through. It's like, whatever comes up, you are just focusing on the practice. You are just learning and integrating with it and learning about yourself. Like, there's been so many things I've learned about myself, the first one and in this one. So many things.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing all of it.
Yeah.
I noticed in like, I've never done the silence retreat, and I've been admittedly pretty inconsistent with my practice of transcendental meditation. And that's only, the way it's practiced is 2 20-minute sessions every day, 1 in the morning, 1 before dinner is what they recommend. And that's hard. It's hard to fit in. And going back to what we were talking about earlier with like, we love the gym. Not only do we love the gym, there's also pieces of needing to do cardio and there's needing to like make the right foods, which takes time. And now it's like, okay, well, how does like meditation fit into this? I'm also trying to journal more. Like, how do I do these things, all of these things that I want to do that I know have benefit and value? And I think going back to what you're saying, it's like, there's going to be different parts of your life and you're going to be in different phases where meditation makes a lot more sense because more time is available. But down the road, a job might pick up, family might expand, you might be moving, whatever. And it's like, you don't have the hour, 2 hours that you'd like. And so like, then you like can fit in other things. But with transcendental meditation, what they talk about and one I can appreciate, I don't know if it's the exact same feeling as where you're like outside your body, just like observing like the vibrations. But there's been times where you're just kind of like slumped, like just fully there and like just fully light. And like, it's so incredibly difficult to explain. And like, when I first started doing meditation, I was like, that's BS. Like, how can you alter your states so that it's like, but no, you do, because we live in this world of constant input. And I'm just like most people am subject to, when I wake up, I put on a song because Spotify is so easy to access. And then I go downstairs and I start cooking breakfast and I have a podcast on, or the TV's on in the background, or I'm, scrolling on Instagram, like while I'm like getting ready for the morning. And then all of a sudden I start work and there's meetings and there's all these other inputs. And then I get off of work and I get in the car to go work out and I have music on. And so there's just like, there's not very many moments in the day where it's just like self-generated what is actually happening in my life. But it's just like, I'm living like with a constant, and the Power of Now describes it as living in like where you have like an AC on in the background and there's like that hum, the things that you're generating, and not the being influenced by the sports talk radio or the music and being like, I don't like this song, like let me move on. And you just realize how little you're actually like thinking for yourself, and most of it is just influenced, input based. And of course you're like, oh, I'm thinking about work. It's like, okay, well then be present and thinking about the things that you want to get done, and I find when I'm able to do that, and that's a practice in itself, is to have the discipline to be like, I know I can turn on that podcast while I do this, but I also know that I feel lighter and better when I'm not constantly taking in other information, and I can just be in my kitchen and I can just cook, and whatever the fuck comes to my head, but like I don't need someone to like influence what I'm thinking about. And at first it's scary, and like I was a person that's like, I didn't like to be with my own thoughts because I would get bored, or I'd think about things that were hard or difficult or stressful or whatever. And then I realized it's actually a reversal effect, where it's like, whenever those things that are stressful or hard or difficult to think through, you need to you're giving yourself the space and the opportunity to work through those things. And I think that's what is so cool about meditation, is that it's a different practice where you're not focused on your breath, but you have a mantra, but naturally your mind wanders and naturally your brain goes in all these different directions. You're sitting there in the morning and you're like, oh, I kind of want a breakfast burrito. And then you forget, you're like, oh, I need to be on my mantra, and like return to your mantra. And then you're sitting there and then you start thinking about the meeting that you have in like an hour. And then you're like, oh shit, I got to do that. And then all of a sudden, 2 minutes later, you're like, oh, I'm not thinking about my mantra. And you return to your mantra, and it's that practice. But all of those wanderings are moments of stress that are being relieved. And it might not be that, thinking about a burrito is stressful, but it's a stress relief returning to the present. And I've noticed when I'm doing that on a consistent basis, I have more energy. I'm happier. People have come up to me and said, like, you're just vibrating right now. Like, well, you're a vibrant human being. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like how giving myself space and an opportunity to like reset, recharge, think through some things that are challenging, just create stillness and peace has such a lasting effect on how I operate during the day. So I can understand the desire, different type of desire, but the wanting to make it a regular practice. But an hour every morning, an hour in the afternoon is so challenging.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, this does with like any like habit, right? We make time for the things that are priorities. And like, I find this to be extremely beneficial. So I'm going to make it a priority, right? Like, it's my choice whether I want to sit and watch our show at night for an hour instead of meditate. That's a choice. And so do the things that make you feel good. There were a couple mornings where we were like waking up at like 3:30 and we're just going to get 30 minutes in, and then we'll start getting ready for work. And then we're like, yeah, okay, we need sleep. So that's why make the priorities that are realistic, but also it's like, I hear so often excuses of, I don't have time. I don't have time either, but I make time. The days are short. I will admit, there's days they fly by, weeks fly by, months, years, but we have this life, right? And if you wanted to make it the best you can and live longer, why are you stressing yourself out? Like, do the things that are going to make you feel good, right? And if it's one of those things where you're stressing about the stress or stressing about doing the things that are going to actually benefit you, that's not helping either. So be strategic about it. Look at your calendar. I'm going to space out this time. Weed out the things that are like not as important or just like taking up space. Like, I choose to shower at night now instead of the morning because it gives me more time. So
It's the stress relief It's the cheap dopamine. It's the easy, quick, TV, Instagram, scrolling, whatever that give you the stress relief because now you have something else distracting you. But that's the most expensive stress relief too because of the tax that it has on your body and on your mental space and everything else. It's much more challenging to sit there and rather than watch a show for 30 minutes, I'm going to go journal about the things that are going on in my life for 30 minutes, even though the ROI of that time is 1,000-fold because I'm not going to remember that TV show in a year. But I love it. I love it. It's an awesome show. Like I'm not going to remember a video game with my brother, like not the specific one, but it's enjoyable. But then it is that same thing. It's making that choice. And our first guest, Tyler Morales, he was down in San Diego last weekend. And so I was hanging out with him and he said something we went on a walk and he said something that I just appreciated. He was like, oh, I don't have time to like sit down and like read a book. And then he immediately corrected himself. He's all, I actually choose to prioritize other things than reading a book. I would have time, but that's why I like audiobooks because I can listen to it in the car. And I was like, that's such like an aware person because most people are saying, I don't have time to read. And then if someone was like observing their 24 hours, it's like, okay, so you slept for 9.5 hours and then you were on your phone in bed for an hour and a half. Maybe we're thinking about like the weekend and you're on your bed, you're in bed on your phone for an hour and a half. And then you woke up and you went and got brunch, which is, do your thing, whatever. And then you came back and you watched the football game. It's like, yeah, you didn't have time because you filled the time with all this other shit. But like, don't complain to me that you want to be reading more and the reason that you haven't. It's basically like, oh, I don't have a book. It's like, okay, well, get a book.
Well, also, too, what they say at the course is for each hour that you meditate, you can actually limit your sleep an hour because it helps with sleep. It was crazy. So, like, I track everything on Whoop, right? And I kept my Whoop on the entire time I was there. I have never had this much REM sleep in my life than when I was there. And I was sleeping 6 hours, maybe less each night. I did take a couple naps. The first 3 days, you're exhausted because your mind's working so much. Like, you just nap. I also have never napped this well in my life when I'm there. But it was crazy. I was looking at my recovery, my REM sleep, and, like, it was saying, like, oh, you had more increased mental activity. So you were in REM sleep longer. It was insane how much it skyrocketed when I was meditating that much. And like, even like now, like me and Brenda talked about this, we're like, we're so much, because the past, like, to be honest, the past week, we haven't been consistent with meditating, and that's on us, like, that we chose not to. We could have, but we just were making excuses. And both of us were like talking about this. We're like, we feel more tired and more sluggish when we wake up, even though we're getting more sleep, than the days that we were actually meditating and getting less sleep. And it shows on my Whoop, like the data actually shows, and the way that I'm actually physically feeling. And so like, that's another reason where I'm like, this is so beneficial for me, not only from a mental perspective and life perspective, but physically, and the way I sleep and the way I perform each day, it is worth it. And like you were talking about before, like having like that silence and that presence, and just like, it's boring being by yourself and not doing anything. It's like, it's good to be bored. Like, I'm such a big proponent that I think so many kids nowadays that just have iPads pushed in front of them because their parents are like, oh, well, they're going to be chaos, like, if I don't distract them. And it's like, let them learn to be bored, that it's okay. Kids should be bored. Adults should be bored, because also this is when your creative side comes out. When you were a kid, like, I was playing in the backyard. I didn't have a phone or an iPad. Like, I was out there pretending I was like an avatar or something, like playing with sticks outside. We had more imagination, more creativity. And like, it's cool because at Vipassana, there's like walking trails, and some of the girls, we couldn't talk obviously, but like, some of the girls started making things out of like the wood and the acorns and collecting like all this cool moss. And they were making like structures on some of like the cut down tree trunks. And it was beautiful. It was like pieces of art. Like, over the days or the 10 days, they were like constructing this. And every time you would pass by, you'd see like more would be added onto it. And it's just like, it shows, it's like, when we are put in a space where we don't have all these distractions, we become more creative. We access that part of our brain. And that's why they say like going on walks when you need like a work break so you can start thinking. Like, it's true. Like, getting outside, being in nature where creativity actually is and spurs creativity, like, it's such a good tool, but we don't use it. And it's like, I think we need more of that. Like we have so many things that are just too easy for us to access now. Like whether it's like TikTok, like they literally made TikTok to have as a short attention span thing to make it an easy stress relief, but it's not a stress relief. I don't think anything like that is a stress reliever.
I
I
think it
think
adds
it's
stress.
a band-aid and it's a distraction from reality. Same with like things like alcohol. It makes you feel a certain way, and that's why people like it. But it's like the true feeling. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when you're at Vipassana, you feel like you're on a shroom trip. It's amazing. You just feel so good, and it's just like it's natural.
Wait, so that's actually super interesting. When you were talking about the 10 days, obviously you're meditating a lot.
Mhm.
But when you're not doing that, so you're out and about, you're like walking around trails. What was that experience like not being able to talk to people? What were your like thoughts like during that time when you're interacting with these people, but you're not you know what I mean?
To be honest, like everyone's always like, "Oh my gosh, not talking to anyone for 10 days. That sounds like so hard." And that's the easiest part. Are you kidding me? Because I think everyone's doing the same thing, so you don't have like FOMO of like, oh, I can't talk to them, but they're talking and like that kind of thing. And someone's on the same page, like we're not talking, we're doing this for ourselves, kind of thing. So not talking is easy, but like it's funny during our like free times or whatever, you can like walk on the paths that they have like lined out for you, like up the hill and stuff. You can be in your room sleeping, but like you'll like pass by people, but like none of us like look at each other. Like we always look down
Right.
because that we're not trying, we're actively trying not to like communicate with each other. But it's so interesting because like you're living with these people for 10 days. You don't know who they are. And on the 10th day, you actually get to talk. They break the noble silence and they say like you may talk to people because they want to integrate you before they send you back out into the real world kind of thing because it can be a shock. And it's so cool. Like I still stay in contact with some people from there, like, but you get to meet these people, their experience, who they are, their life. Cause you have like, we always kind of make like assumptions of like, oh, I think this person does this, or like, I think they're like this, or
Yeah.
I think their voice sounds like this kind of thing. Right. And so meeting them after talking about your experience, talking about who you are and stuff at the end of it is like, it's so amazing. It really is. And also like the weird thing is it's like, the first time I went, I actually started tearing up when I first would talk to someone because also like noises, hearing voices is so loud. Like you feel it's overwhelming the sensation. Like my ears almost feel like they're plugged up because they're like ringing. And it's a very emotional thing. Being able to communicate again and talk to someone and look someone in the eyes. And it's incredible, honestly.
How did
Um
how did the sorry, this is just a random thought. How do they wake you up in the morning? Like do they
Well, they bell. Yeah, so one
okay.
person, an old student, is designated to come around with their bell and like go by all the houses, and they do that. But they also have alarm clocks in the room. Like I always bring my own alarm clock, and you can wear watches. You just can't wear watches that are like did like beep or like do anything like that. But I had an alarm clock. But yeah, they ring a bell for like when breakfast time is happening, when you're supposed to go to the meditation hall. But you have a clock in your room.
Is it a peaceful bell or is it an
Yeah, it's like
alarm?
it's almost like a gong type of bell.
That's what I was picturing.
Yeah, it's literally like that. But yeah, I mean, the silence part, that part's it's not hard, at least for me. But there are people who go home. They really try to make like keep you there and say like, hey, just like try one more day. Try one more day. But like they obviously can't force you. And so there are people that leave and have like full mental breakdowns because they just can't handle it. They're not ready for it, or like they're going through something that's bigger than them and they're not in the place to acknowledge it. And so it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's hard.
Cool,
It's a
we
hard thing to do.
Coleman, we may need to do this.
Oh,
Yeah, I would
yeah,
highly
the
recommend that.
retreat
Yeah.
seems
Yeah, I'll
interesting.
send you. Yeah, and also I always hear too, like, oh, I can't take 10 days out of my schedule and work and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Yeah, if you have vacation days saved up, like 10 days of your life here is far more worth it than a vacation in Maui just one time. Like, this is your life. Like, if it's gonna liberate you and be beneficial, I am a big proponent. It is absolutely worth it.
I've been very into the idea of doing things that just have a positive, lasting effect. So like stacking my day where like in the morning, ideally you do a meditation and a stretch and like that makes you feel good for like a few hours. And then you eat the right foods that don't make you feel bloated or feel, emotionally dysregulated. And then when you work out, you're working out, feels good in the moment, but you also are more confident and feel better during the day, which makes you sleep better at night, which it's that compounding effect again. But it's like social media, like on the flip side, is it feels good, maybe has the same like dopamine feeling in the moment, but
Mhm.
then there's no lasting. It's like eating sugar. It's great in the second, and then all of a sudden you crash because of it. And so it's like, how can how can you have more and more sustainable habits that increase the sustainability and the efficiency of your ability to do your day? And I thought about it as like, how do you make your life's engine more efficient? How do you increase the MPG, your miles per gallon of your life? And I defined you got to increase your MPG to increase your efficiency of your body. And MPG is movement, presence, and gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can increase your M, your P, and your G, you will run at a more effective, you'll be able to do more with your life. And so it's not that that's 100% of my life all day long, every day is like doing the things that are going to make me just optimal. But if that number, as an arbitrary number of 0 to 10, if that number right now is a 3 out of 10, how good you are at MPG, and you make it a 5, you're improving. You're getting better. It's what's the pie chart of time look like of your day, and like, can you just increase the pie chart to doing the things that have a positive impact? And if you can focus on that, I think you're gonna be, and you do that for the next 60 years, you're gonna live a pretty damn good life.
Yeah, and I think like we talked about, a huge thing of it is like the attachment, craving, and averting. Like, just look at life objectively. It's okay to have emotions. I'm a big proponent, like, you should feel emotions. It's a huge part of being a human, and it's important and beautiful. But when you start attaching yourself to it too much, that's when it can become a misery or be destructive. Balance.
That's awesome. Well, Maddie, I want to say thank you for being our second official guest on the Earn Your Couch podcast.
Thank you.
I know we've been talking about this for about a month now, and so I'm fired up that we were able to make it happen. Is there anything you want to plug for online coaching or your training?
Yeah, I'll give you guys my Instagram handle and stuff. But yeah, I'm always reach out to me. Talk to me. Let's be friends.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Earn Your Couch. And you know what? If you made it this far, you're one of the true listeners. So Jacob and I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you for sticking around. If you haven't already, give us a follow at Earn Your Couch on Instagram, Spotify, TikTok, and YouTube. If you have a family member or maybe a loved one or even a friend that you think would benefit from the conversation that we had today, we would really appreciate it if you shared this podcast with them. More importantly, if you are earning your couch, feel free to tag us. Tag our Instagram account at Earn Your Couch. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.